I'll start. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the last books panel of today of the Effective Graphic Design Conference here at Kunstinstituut Melli in Rotterdam. I'm sitting next to Viktorija and Goda, who will in a minute present their latest publication, El Plastico, The Sun Lives Inside the Rock. Both Goda and Viktorija aren't strangers to the institution. They've been working with us since 2018 and have designed the first visual identity of then named Witte de Wit when Sophia started as the director in 2018. And they've been working with us since then. So I'm very pleased to have them back here in Rotterdam. And I'll give the floor to you both, Goda and Viktorija. I hope everybody online tunes in and that people having a wine next door will slowly move in. So let's start.
Shall we invite everybody? Hello everybody. Thanks for enduring this long day and still being here. And tonight we would like to introduce to you a publication called El Plastico, The Sun That Lives Inside the Rock. And this book comprises almost 5 years of research on the material of plastic, and it took between 2014 and 18. And as we know, the last couple of years haven't been really easy to launch things physically. So although we have published this book in 2020 in March, actually just at the beginning of the lockdown, we haven't had so many opportunities to present it to the real audience. And somehow, since the book itself is about the substance, about the material, and the book itself is a carefully conceived object, we thought that the real event would really matter. So we would like to thank Kunstinstituut Melli for having us tonight.
Thank you, Melli. And tonight we would like to talk, to introduce you to our research on the history of plastic and to talk about our 3 trips to Mexico, during which we concluded our story about plastic. And so eventually, once we started working on the research, we decided that we want to detour from a usual guilt-driven narrative about plastic and to rather see it as an integral part on Earth that exposes us to causes and effects that generally is symptomatic of life, and to see it as a living matter as well, connected to fire and other elements. And so we started to speculate where it all began, and Goda will talk about our first trip to Mexico.
So indeed, to give you a short introduction of our first trip, in 2014, Viktorija and I found ourselves in Mexico City. She has just completed architecture studies. I led to Mexico with a broken heart, and we both came out with a research on plastic. And anyway, at that time, we were both looking actually of how to be involved in the world beyond the parameters of one's own profession, how to be more involved with each other, and how to stimulate one's other's curiosity and perhaps find different models of knowledge production. And plastic, beyond its obvious ecological nightmare, also is a fluid matter. And plastikos, translated from Greek means being able to mold, allowing to enter into the conversation about the substance through a multiplicity of angles. And one of the things that we were most fascinated about since our arrival to Mexico in 2014 is the way Mexicans use plastic and appropriate it in diverse contexts. And strolling through the streets of Mexico City, we observed how the material became part of city landscape. With nearly every human-to-human transaction, there was plastic involved, from plastic money to orange juice and plastic bags. But we were especially fascinated by the beautifully woven plastic baskets made by artisans and who came to use actually that material instead of natural palm fiber straws. So it made us question what makes the role of what is the role of plastic in this country. We were just so curious and fascinated how one material can hijack so many aspects of human existence. And in principle, this is how our first trip concluded, and that became the starting point for our research.
So thanks to our enthusiasm to mend hearts and begin our path as research-based artists and designers, we came back to Mexico City at the end of the same year, and just before our previous visit, just before the departure, we managed to organize meeting with the director of the Design Museum, Regina Pozzo, who offered us to use a studio in the museum for the research. And we also met with the chatty taxi driver who told us about Plastimagen, massive plastics manufacturers fair happening every year in Mexico City, and which is also one of the biggest in Latin America. So you can, the scale of which you can only get an inkling of is overwhelming. So once we arrived to Mexico, we installed ourselves in the studio. We went directly to that massive fair, and it was quite probably brutal start to the research, because not only it's like an intense 3 days event gathering small and big manufacturers who introduced to the newest plastic objects or molding machines. For example, here you can see manhole cover made from thermoplastic, and it's quite popular in Mexico, where the metal ones get stolen from the streets. And here, for example, you see one of the highlights of the fair, which was a box made from a single mold, and which apparently saved a lot of card boxes. So whenever we would approach stands and try to chit-chat about ecological impact of plastic, and we would only get like silent looks, and we understood we were in a wrong fair. So the level of enthusiasm went down to follow on our research path, but what we decided to do next is to figure out where it all began, and what were humans doing before plastic didn't exist as a material. So we went to Anthropology Museum.
So I'll tell more about that bit. And exactly, so after our initial visit to the plastics fair, literally to microplastics still sticking to the tip of our fingers, because it's completely sticky matter. And mostly with an image of the future somehow spiraling in image of neglect, we headed to the National Anthropology Museum, to the deep chambers of the past, looking for ancestral roots of plastic. And we were wondering, as Viktorija said, where it all began. And looking for the variety of man-made objects, sometimes we were surprised by the resemblance of some to objects, contemporary plastic objects of today. And in this path, what made the difference, or in our, was the Olmec made rubber ball. It opened the history of plastic for us, stretching even 1600 before Christ. So Mexico is the birth giver of plastic. It was the first place where this kind of chemical formula was conceived. And Olmecs have learned already at that time how to mix, for example, Castilla elastica, the plant, which is like a rubber plant, juiced together with a morning glory sap. And they were good at it in mixing, so they could actually make different objects, from the rubber balls that were used for ritual sports, or rubber soles, or joints for tools. So through the analysis of anthropological museum artifacts, and also spending time at the library, browsing through books and observing how historians classify materials and objects, we got an idea to make a plastic timeline. Timeline that in our own understanding would trace how plasticity found in deep layers of the earth, in rocks and organic materials, was in Mesoamerica continuously improved by synthesizing new materials, how oil gives shape to plastic we know today, and how it returns back to the earth in a different shape. And the timeline is divided into main 4 categories: protoplastic, plastics, synthetic plastics, and post-plastics. And I won't go too much into the details of it, but like in the book that we're happy to show afterwards, in the middle section, we have the timeline printed and included. So that was a big conclusive step, I think, for us at that moment. And Viktorija can continue from here.
So the research itself started as individual quest to find different ways of producing new knowledge, and we never had supervisors who would guide us through the vast territory of independent research. And so to stay motivated to do what we have begun, we relied a lot on external collaborators and experts from art and theory fields. And once we came back from Mexico and started working on the timeline, curator of the Baltic Triennial approached us and invited us to show parts of our research in the triennial. And this transdisciplinary event focused on topics as education and futurity. And one of the messages that it amplified was learning as a way to prepare for a future. To which we responded with the publication of this timeline. And we made an installation that was called Plastiglomerate. Plastiglomerate itself, it's a name for a new geological formation that a title that oceanographer Charles Moore came up with when he found a kind of new geological formations made out of plastic parts and natural sediments like clay, wooden parts. So the work itself was inspired by this image, a memory of seeing subway stairs in Mexico City being filled with this colorful plastic. And similarly, we did inclusions with polymer in the stairs in the cracks of the stairs. So this images here, it's from Kunstverein Munich. We were invited by Chris Fitzpatrick and Matthew Post, who also wrote 2 beautiful texts in this book. And coming back to the subject of our collaborators, once we showed our work in the Baltic Triennial, Lithuanian philosopher Kristupas Sabolius approached us and kind of asked us to bring our research step forward and to write a text about our plastic timeline and the way we see plastic living through its different time periods. And he also he also made instantly connection with famous concept of plasticity developed by French philosopher Catherine Malabou. So when we were working on the book, we asked him to interview Catherine Malabou about the future of plasticity. So all those texts you can discover in our book, and I'm giving back the mic to Goda.
So that was chapter 2 in terms of the trips, and we made one more trip to Mexico City. That was the last one concerning the research, and that was in 2018. And we wanted to return to Oaxaca, a city where, for us, the conversation about the plastic began. And that time we contacted a local artisan, Martina Garcia, and we asked her if she could teach us in a collective session with her to weave together. And this moment of weaving together or learning together was an important aspect linked to the whole research, and also as a meditative process, like thinking about the material somehow through the tip of your fingers. And in the end, what we ended up having is kind of a finished basket, and that you can see in the picture there, in the making, in the process, which turned upside down, looked more like a hat or maybe some kind of magical object for future storytelling. But there is no really end to this story, and because, I don't know, the continuity of the use of plastic is a complex one. As the world is deeply dipped into oil in its produce and coming out from the deep layers of the earth, it has given shape and rainbow colors to many things. But we wanted with Viktorija to find a kind of conclusive moment to our own quest.
A shamanic epilogue to this talk. We felt that we need that this multiform research needs some kind of ending that goes beyond the graspable knowledge, and so we decided to do a ritual which took place in the only nudist beach in the whole Catholic Mexico. In Zipolite, in Oaxaca coastline. And we arrived there well in advance to collect elements that we would sacrifice for the gods of the fire. And you can see those elements in this picture. So before burning the objects that belonged one way or another to plastic timeline, and giving back to the earth what it has created, we recited a poem at that same beach in Zipolite at 4 a.m. in the morning, and we were very happy that we were not spotted by our hotel guards. So we would like to end this talk by reciting this poem.
Earth. Wait a second. Earth, take back the broken clay pot, the amber. Take back the rubber gloves, the morning glory flower. Take back the plastic bag and the basket. Take back the paraffin candle and the plastic straw. Take back the palm leaf.
Thank you for your attention, and we're open for your questions.
And the book is here for everyone to have a look at, and it's bound with a rubber band, which is an ancestor of plastic as we see it.
And we forgot to mention the publisher is Bomgia Books, and also Manuel was one of the contributors to Medley Space. And I think you can find a lot of his books and from the publisher downstairs.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Goda and Viktorija. Manuel Rader also designed Cecilia Vicuna's book that we published in 2019, and indeed designed the bookcases and the chairs and the tables that are found in the bookshop downstairs. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for coming. The book is for sale, so if you want one, you can buy one downstairs in Melly. And I want to invite all of you tomorrow again for the second and last day of this conference. We will start at 11:30, and there are good panels and book events and keynotes ahead. Still some tickets left. So if you want to join, please do, and have all a good evening. Thank you all.